Daniel Brooks never thought walking a stranger through the rain would shatter everything he believed about where he belonged in the world. One cold Brooklyn evening, one simple favor, one woman who hid behind silence, and suddenly he was standing outside a billion-dollar empire realizing he'd been played. Or had he? When the truth came pouring out in that storm, it wasn't about money or status. It was about two people who'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. If you want to know how a single umbrella changed two lives forever, stay until the end. Like this video and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain came down hard that Tuesday night, the kind that turned Brooklyn streets into rivers and made everyone walk faster, shoulders hunched, looking for cover. Daniel Brooks stood behind the counter of 9th Street Coffee, watching the last customer hurry out into the downpour, their coat pulled tight over their head. The bell above the door chimed weakly, then went silent. He exhaled. 6 p.m. Another shift done. Daniel wiped down the espresso machine with slow, methodical strokes, the same way he did every night. Routine kept him steady. Routine kept him sane. At 32, he'd learned that chaos came in waves, and the only way to survive it was to build walls out of small, predictable tasks. Wipe the counter, stack the chairs, lock the register, go home. Kiss his daughter goodnight. Don't think too hard. Don't want too much. He grabbed his jacket from the back room, a worn brown thing that used to fit better before he'd lost weight last winter, and pulled it on. The shop was quiet now, just the hum of the refrigerator and the rain hammering against the windows. He liked it like this. Peaceful. No one asking him questions he didn't have answers to. Daniel checked his phone. One text from his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. Emma's asleep. Take your time. He smiled faintly. Emma was 7 now, all wild curls and endless questions, and she had Mrs. Alvarez wrapped around her little finger. The older woman had been watching her after school for 2 years now, ever since Daniel's ex-wife decided motherhood wasn't for her and moved to Seattle without looking back. He didn't blame her anymore. Not really. It took too much energy to stay angry. He pocketed his phone, grabbed his keys, and headed for the door. The rain was louder now, drumming against the awning outside. He flipped the sign to closed, twisted the lock, and stepped out into the storm. Cold air hit him like a slap. He pulled his hood up and started walking, hands shoved deep in his pockets. The subway station was 4 blocks away. If he moved fast, he'd only be soaked to the knees instead of completely drenched. He made it half a block before he heard her voice. "Excuse me." Daniel stopped, turned. She stood under the awning of a closed bookstore, arms wrapped around herself. No umbrella, no coat. Just a simple black dress and heels that looked expensive but impractical. Her hair was dark, pulled back tight, and her face was calm in a way that didn't match the situation. She didn't look lost. She didn't look scared. She just looked alone. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "I know this is going to sound strange, but could you walk me home?" Daniel blinked. "What?" "It's not far," she said quickly. "Just a few blocks. I'll pay you if—" "I'm not asking for money," Daniel interrupted, frowning. "Are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I don't want to walk alone." He studied her for a moment. She wasn't drunk, wasn't stumbling, didn't seem hurt, but there was something in her eyes, something guarded, like she was holding herself together with sheer willpower. Daniel glanced at his phone. Mrs. Alvarez said Emma was asleep. He had time. "Yeah," he said finally. "Okay." Relief flickered across her face, brief and genuine. "Thank you." He pulled a compact umbrella from his jacket pocket, cheap, half broken, but functional, and opened it. "This isn't going to cover both of us very well." "That's fine." They started walking. She stayed close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The rain pounded against the umbrella, drowning out most of the city noise. For a while, neither of them spoke. Daniel didn't know what to say. He wasn't good at small talk, especially with strangers, especially with women who looked like her, polished, composed, like they belonged somewhere he didn't. "I'm Daniel," he said finally, because the silence was starting to feel heavy. "Isabella. You live around here?" "Not exactly." He waited for her to elaborate. She didn't. They crossed an intersection, water pooling at the curbs. Isabella stepped carefully, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. She didn't complain, didn't ask to slow down, just kept pace with him, her expression unreadable. "You always ask strangers to walk you home?" Daniel asked, trying to keep his tone light. "No," she said. "First time." "So why me?" She glanced at him, something uncertain flickering in her eyes. "You looked safe." Daniel didn't know what to do with that, so he said nothing. They walked another block. The rain wasn't letting up. His sneakers were soaked through, and he could feel water creeping up his jeans. Isabella's dress clung to her legs, but she didn't seem bothered. "You work at that coffee shop?" she asked. "Yeah." "How long?" 3 years. "You like it?" Daniel shrugged. "It pays the bills." "That's not the same thing." "No," he admitted. "It's not." She tilted her head slightly, curious. "What would you do if you didn't have to worry about bills?" He let out a short laugh. "I don't know. I haven't had the luxury of thinking about it." "You should." "Why?" "Because everyone should have something they want," she said quietly, "even if they can't have it yet." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time that night, he saw something beneath the calm exterior. A weariness, a loneliness that matched his own. "What about you?" he asked. "What do you want?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was so soft he almost didn't hear it over the rain. "I don't know anymore." They turned onto a quieter street, lined with brownstones and old oak trees. The streetlights glowed faintly through the rain, casting everything in a dim, amber haze. It felt like they'd stepped out of the city entirely, into some quieter, slower version of the world. "I have a daughter," Daniel said suddenly. He didn't know why he said it. Maybe because the silence was pulling things out of him. Maybe because Isabella seemed like the kind of person who wouldn't judge. "How old?" she asked. 7. Her name's Emma. "Does she live with you?" "Yeah, just the two of us." Isabella was quiet for a moment. "That must be hard." "It is," Daniel said, "but she's the best thing I've ever done." "Does she know that?" "I hope so." They walked past a small park, the swing swaying gently in the wind. Daniel used to bring Emma here on weekends, back when she was smaller. She'd beg him to push her higher, higher, until he was sure she'd fly right off the seat. She never did, though. She always held on. "You're a good father," Isabella said. Daniel glanced at her, surprised. "You don't know that." "I can tell." "How?" "Because you didn't hesitate when I asked for help," she said. "And because you're walking me home in a storm instead of asking for something in return." Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he just kept walking. The neighborhood was changing now. The worn brownstones were giving way to something newer, something shinier, buildings with glass facades and polished steel. The kind of places that had marble lobbies and doormen who wore uniforms. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Something wasn't adding up. "Isabella," he said slowly, "where exactly do you live?" "Not much further." "That's not an answer." She didn't respond. They turned another corner, and suddenly they were on a street Daniel had only seen in passing. High-end boutiques, art galleries with single paintings in the windows, buildings that looked like they belonged in a magazine. "This is where you live?" Daniel asked, slowing his pace. "Yes." He stopped walking entirely. "What's going on?" "What do you mean?" "You don't live in a neighborhood like this and ask a random guy from a coffee shop to walk you home," Daniel said, his voice rising slightly. "You call a car service. You call security. You don't stand in the rain waiting for someone to feel sorry for you." Isabella turned to face him fully, and for the first time her composure cracked just a little. "I didn't want a car." "Then what did you want?" "I wanted—" She trailed off, searching for words. "I wanted to feel like a normal person, just for a little while." Daniel stared at her. "What the hell does that mean?" Before she could answer, the door to one of the buildings opened, and a man in a black suit stepped out, holding a large umbrella. His face was tight with controlled concern, the kind of expression that came from years of professional training. "Miss Laurent," he said, his tone polite but firm. "We've been trying to reach you for over an hour. Mr. Chen is waiting in the car." "Miss Laurent." The words hit Daniel like cold water. He looked at Isabella, really looked at her, and suddenly things started clicking into place. The expensive shoes, the way she carried herself, the fact that she'd been standing in the rain without seeming to care. "Miss Laurent?" Daniel repeated slowly. Isabella closed her eyes for a brief moment, like she was bracing herself. When she opened them again, she looked directly at him. Isabella Laurent, she said quietly, CEO of Laurent Industries. The name knocked the air out of his lungs. Laurent Industries, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, billions in revenue, offices in 30 countries. He'd seen her face on magazine covers in the grocery store checkout line, though he'd never paid much attention. Young, brilliant, ruthless, that's what the headlines always said. And he'd just walked her home like she was nobody. Daniel took a step back, suddenly feeling like the world's biggest idiot. "You're a billionaire," he said flatly. "Yes, and you asked me to walk you home." "Yes." "Why?" The word came out harder than he intended. Isabella opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment she looked genuinely lost, like she didn't know how to explain herself. The man in the suit cleared his throat gently. "Miss Laurent, we really should—" "Give me a minute," Isabella said, not looking at him. The man hesitated, then nodded and stepped back toward the building. Isabella turned back to Daniel, and he saw something in her face he hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Real, unguarded vulnerability. "I was tired," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was tired of people looking at me like I'm a checkbook or a stepping stone. I was tired of conversations that don't mean anything. I was tired of being alone in a room full of people who only want something from me." Daniel shook his head. "So you thought you'd play pretend for an hour, see how the other half lives?" "No," Isabella said quickly. "That's not—" "I don't need your pity," Daniel snapped. "I don't need to be your charity case for the night. Your little experiment in normal life. You weren't an experiment. Then what was I?" She looked at him for a long moment, and he saw her trying to hold herself together, trying not to let the cracks show. "You were kind," she said finally. "You were kind without expecting anything in return. Do you know how rare that is in my world?" Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Your world?" "Right. Because we live in different worlds. Don't we?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that people were people, that money didn't change that. But standing here, on the street with buildings he could never afford to live in, looking at a woman whose net worth probably exceeded the GDP of a small country, he couldn't make himself say it. Because she was right. They did live in different worlds. "I'm sorry," Isabella said quietly. "I shouldn't have asked you. It wasn't fair to you." She turned and started walking toward the building. Daniel stood there, rain soaking through his jacket, watching her go. He should have felt relieved, should have felt like he'd dodged a bullet. But instead, he just felt hollow, empty, like something had been offered to him and snatched away before he could understand what it was. Isabella reached the door, and the man in the suit moved to open it for her. She stopped, turned back. "Thank you," she said, loud enough for him to hear over the rain, "for treating me like a person, not like Isabella Laurent. Just a person." The words landed somewhere deep in his chest. Then she was gone, disappearing into the gleaming lobby, and Daniel was alone on the street. He stood there for what felt like a long time, staring at the building. The rain kept falling, the city kept moving around him, but he couldn't make himself walk away. Finally, he forced himself to turn around, to start walking back toward the subway. His mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She'd used him, hadn't she? But it hadn't felt like that. It had felt real. Or maybe he was just an idiot who wanted it to be real. By the time he made it to the subway, he was soaked to the bone and no closer to understanding anything. Daniel made it home a little after 7:30. His apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, a living room that doubled as his workspace, but it was theirs. He and Emma had lived here since she was 3, and despite the peeling paint and the radiator that only worked half the time, it felt like home. Mrs. Alvarez met him at the door, her round face creased with concern. "You're soaked. It's raining." "I can see that, mijo." She handed him a towel from the bathroom. "Emma's been asleep for 2 hours. She asked about you before bed." "Thanks for staying late," Daniel said, drying his hair. "I'll pay you extra this week." "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I will." Mrs. Alvarez smiled, the kind of warm, genuine smile that reminded Daniel of his own mother. She patted his arm. You're a good boy. Too hard on yourself, but good. I'm 32, not exactly a boy anymore. You'll always be a boy to me. She grabbed her purse from the couch. There's leftover chicken in the fridge if you're hungry. And Daniel? Yeah? Whatever's bothering you, it'll look better in the morning. He managed a small smile. I hope you're right. After she left, Daniel locked the door and stood in the quiet apartment, listening to the rain against the windows. He peeled off his wet jacket, kicked off his sneakers, and padded quietly down the hall to Emma's room. She was curled up under her blankets, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Her hair, dark and wild, just like his, spread across the pillow in a tangled mess that would be a nightmare to brush in the morning. Daniel crouched beside her bed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. Love you, kiddo, he whispered. She mumbled something unintelligible and rolled over, pulling the rabbit closer. Daniel smiled, kissed her forehead gently, and stood. Back in the living room, he made himself a cup of instant coffee, the cheap kind that tasted like burnt rubber but had enough caffeine to keep him functional, and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. He thought about Isabella, about the way she'd stood in the rain, calm and composed, like she belonged there and nowhere else at the same time. About the way her voice had cracked when she said she was tired of being alone. About the way she'd looked at him when she said thank you, like those two words carried more weight than he could understand. He didn't get it. Didn't understand why someone with everything, money, power, success, would want anything from him, would need anything from him. But for reasons he couldn't explain and didn't want to examine too closely, he couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she'd asked him what he wanted, like the question mattered. About the way she'd said everyone should have something they want, even if they can't have it yet. Daniel set his coffee down and rubbed his eyes. He was tired. Bone-tired in a way that had nothing to do with the long shift or the walk in the rain. He was tired of living small. Tired of measuring his life in bills paid and shifts covered. Tired of wanting things he couldn't name and wouldn't let himself reach for. But he didn't know how to be anything else. This was who he was. A single father working a dead-end job, trying to give his daughter something better than what he had. That was enough. It had to be enough. He finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easy, and when it did, he dreamed of rain and quiet conversations and a woman who looked at him like he mattered. The next morning, Daniel woke to Emma jumping on his bed. Dad, wake up, he groaned, pulling the pillow over his head. Emma, it's Saturday. I know, that means pancakes. It's 7 in the morning. Pancakes don't care what time it is. Daniel laughed despite himself and sat up, ruffling her hair. All right, go brush your teeth. I'll start the batter. She bolted out of the room like she'd been launched from a cannon, and Daniel dragged himself into the kitchen, still half asleep. By the time Emma came back, teeth brushed, face washed, hair still a disaster, he had the griddle heating and the batter mixed. She climbed onto a stool at the counter, swinging her legs. Can I have chocolate chips in mine? She asked. You always have chocolate chips in yours. Then why do you ask? I don't know. Politeness? She grinned, showing the gap where she'd lost a tooth last week. Please, can I have chocolate chips? Yes. She watched him pour the batter, her chin resting on her hands. Dad? Yeah? Are you sad? Daniel paused, glancing at her. What makes you think I'm sad? You were quiet last night. You're always quiet when you're sad. He flipped the first pancake, buying himself a moment to think. I'm not sad, kiddo, just tired. From work? Yeah, from work. She nodded, accepting the answer without pushing. That was one of the things he loved about her. She knew when to let things go. Mrs. Alvarez said you're doing a good job, Emma said. Did she? Yeah, she said you're the best dad she knows. Daniel smiled, something warm spreading through his chest. That's nice of her. I think so too, Emma said seriously. You're the best dad I know. I'm the only dad you know. Doesn't make it less true. He plated her pancakes, too, with chocolate chips arranged in a smiley face, just the way she liked them, and set them in front of her. She drowned them in syrup immediately, humming happily as she dug in. Daniel made himself a cup of coffee and sat across from her, watching her eat. This was enough. This was everything. He didn't need anything else. The weekend passed quietly. Daniel and Emma fell into their usual routine: cartoons on Saturday morning, grocery shopping in the afternoon, movie night on Sunday. They built a blanket fort in the living room that took up half the apartment and watched an animated movie about talking animals that Emma had seen at least 12 times but never got tired of. Normal, predictable, safe. By Sunday night, Daniel had almost convinced himself that the whole thing with Isabella had been some kind of weird dream, a strange blip in his otherwise unremarkable life that didn't mean anything and wouldn't matter come Monday morning. But Monday morning came, and he found himself thinking about her again. He was at the coffee shop by 6 a.m., pulling shots of espresso for the morning rush. The routine should have been comforting: steam milk, take orders, wipe counters, repeat. But his mind kept drifting to the rain, to the quiet conversation, to the way Isabella had looked at him when she said everyone should have something they want. "Daniel, you okay?" He blinked. His coworker Marcus was staring at him from the register. "Yeah, why?" "You just made the same cappuccino 3 times." Daniel looked down. 3 identical cups sat on the counter. "Shit," he dumped them out. "Sorry, I'm distracted." "I can tell." Marcus grinned. "What's her name?" "What?" "The girl. The one you're thinking about. What's her name?" "There's no girl." "You're a terrible liar." Daniel didn't respond. He just started making the cappuccino again, trying to focus. The morning rush was brutal. By 9 a.m., Daniel's feet hurt and his head was pounding. He was refilling the milk when the bell above the door chimed. He glanced up, ready to greet the next customer, and froze. Isabella stood in the doorway. She looked different today. No designer dress, no expensive heels, just jeans, a simple sweater, and sneakers that looked like they'd actually been walked in. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she wasn't wearing any makeup that he could see. She looked normal. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she walked up to the counter, her expression uncertain. "Hi," she said quietly. Daniel's brain went blank. "Hi. Can I—" She hesitated. "Can I get a coffee?" "Yeah, sure. What do you want?" "Black. Just black." He nodded and turned to the machine, his hands moving on autopilot. He could feel her watching him, could feel the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air between them. When he handed her the cup, their fingers brushed for just a second. "Thank you," she said. "No problem." She didn't leave. Instead, she took a sip of the coffee, then looked at him with those same quiet, searching eyes. "I meant what I said the other night," she told him. "You treated me like a person. No one does that anymore." Daniel swallowed hard. "I didn't know who you were." "I know," she said. "That's why it mattered." Behind him, Marcus was pretending not to listen, while very obviously listening. Daniel could feel his eyes burning into the back of his head. "Can we—" Isabella glanced around the busy shop. "Can we talk? Somewhere else?" Daniel looked at the line of customers waiting. At Marcus, who was grinning like an idiot. At the clock on the wall. "I'm working until 2, he said. "I can wait." "It's 4 hours." "I know." She said it so simply, like waiting 4 hours was nothing. Like she had nowhere else to be. Like he was worth waiting for. Daniel didn't know what to do with that. "Okay," he said finally. "There's a park 2 blocks east. I'll meet you there at 2:15. Isabella smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Okay?" She turned and walked to a table in the corner, sat down, and pulled out a book. And for the next 4 hours, while Daniel made coffee and took orders and tried not to look at her every 5 seconds, Isabella Laurent sat in a coffee shop and waited. For him, those 4 hours were the longest of Daniel's life. He went through the motions, grinding beans, steaming milk, calling out orders. But his mind was somewhere else entirely. Isabella sat in the corner with her book, turning pages slowly, occasionally glancing up at him. Every time their eyes met, she'd look away quickly, like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. Marcus kept elbowing him. "Dude, that's her, isn't it?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "The girl you've been spacing out about. That's definitely her." Daniel ignored him and focused on the cappuccino he was making, except he added cinnamon instead of cocoa powder and had to start over. "You got it bad," Marcus said, grinning. "Shut up." "I'm just saying, she's been sitting there for 3 hours drinking the same cup of coffee. That's either love or a caffeine problem." "It's not love." What is it then? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. By 1:30, the lunch rush had died down. By 1:45, the shop was almost empty. Isabella was still there, her book closed now, just watching the rain that had started up again outside. At 2 o'clock exactly, Daniel untied his apron and hung it on the hook in the back room. His replacement, a college kid named Tyler, showed up right on time. "You good?" Tyler asked. "Yeah, thanks for covering." Daniel grabbed his jacket, took a deep breath, and walked over to Isabella's table. She looked up at him, something uncertain in her expression. "Hi." "Ready?" he asked. She nodded and stood, leaving a $20 bill on the table for a $3 coffee. "You don't have to—" "I know," she said simply. They walked out together into the rain. It wasn't as heavy as it had been that night, just a steady drizzle that made everything look gray and soft. Daniel pulled out his pathetic umbrella again, and Isabella stepped close without being asked. They didn't talk as they walked. The park was only 2 blocks away, a small green space tucked between buildings with a few benches and a sad-looking fountain that hadn't worked in years. There was a covered pavilion near the back, and Daniel headed for it automatically. They sat on one of the benches under the shelter, rain drumming on the metal roof above them. For a while, neither of them spoke. Daniel broke first. "Why'd you come back?" Isabella was quiet for a moment, her hands folded in her lap. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said." "What did I say?" "That I was playing pretend, that you were my experiment." She turned to look at him. "You were right. That's exactly what it looked like. And I'm sorry." "Okay." "But you were also wrong," she continued. "You weren't an experiment. You were a break from everything." Daniel frowned. "I don't understand." Isabella looked out at the rain, choosing her words carefully. "Do you know what my life looks like? Every minute of every day is scheduled. Meetings, conferences, calls with investors, strategy sessions. Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an agenda. And if they don't want something, they're intimidated. They see the money and the title, and they forget there's a person underneath." "So you decided to slum it with the coffee guy?" "No." Her voice was sharp, almost hurt. "I decided to talk to someone who didn't know who I was. Someone who might actually be honest with me." "And was I? Honest?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Painfully so." Daniel leaned back against the bench, processing. "You could have just told me the truth from the start. Would you have walked with me if I had?" He thought about it. Probably not. He would have assumed she was messing with him or setting him up for something. He would have made an excuse and left. "No," he admitted. "I wouldn't have." "Exactly." They sat in silence again. The rain kept falling. Someone walked past the park with a dog, both of them soaked and miserable looking. "What do you want from me, Isabella?" Daniel asked finally. "Because I'm not going to pretend I understand why you're here." She turned to face him fully. "I want to know you. You don't know me already? I know you're a single father who works at a coffee shop and treats strangers with kindness, even when you're exhausted. I know you ask questions instead of making assumptions. I know you don't bullshit people." She paused. "But I don't know what makes you laugh, or what keeps you up at night, or what you dream about when you let yourself dream." Daniel felt something twist in his chest. "Why does that matter to you?" "Because you're real," she said simply. "And I don't have enough real in my life." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was romanticizing him, that he wasn't anything special, just a guy trying to get by. But the way she was looking at him, open, vulnerable, almost desperate, stopped the words in his throat. "I don't know what you expect me to say," he told her. "I don't expect anything. I'm just asking for a chance." "A chance at what?" "Friendship, conversation, something that isn't transactional." She hesitated. "Is that too much to ask?" Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the billion-dollar empire and the magazine covers. He saw someone who was lonely in a way he recognized, someone who was tired of performing. "No," he said quietly. "It's not too much." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you. But I need you to understand something," Daniel added. "I don't live in your world. I can't afford fancy restaurants or whatever it is people like you do. I've got a 7-year-old daughter and a job that barely covers rent. This," he gestured between them, "whatever this is, It can't interfere with that. I understand. Do you? Because I'm serious. Emma comes first. Always.
I wouldn't expect anything less, Isabella said. And for what it's worth, I think that makes you a better person than most people I know. Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. They sat there for a while longer, watching the rain. It felt easier now, less tense, like something had been settled between them, even if Daniel wasn't entirely sure what. Can I ask you something? Isabella said eventually. Sure. What happened with Emma's mother?
Daniel tensed. He didn't talk about Sarah much, didn't see the point in rehashing old wounds, but something about Isabella's voice, gentle, genuinely curious, made him answer. She left, he said simply. Emma was 5. Sarah decided she didn't want to be a mother anymore, didn't want the responsibility, so she moved across the country and started over. Does she see Emma? Birthday cards, Christmas presents sometimes. That's it. Isabella was quiet. That must have been hard. It was harder on Emma than me, Daniel said. She kept asking when Mommy was coming home. I didn't know how to tell her that Mommy wasn't coming home, that she'd chosen not to. How did you tell her? I didn't really. She just figured it out eventually, stopped asking. He rubbed his face. I don't know if that's better or worse. You're doing your best, Isabella said softly. That counts for something. Does it? Yes. Daniel looked at her. You don't have kids, do you? No. Ever want them? Isabella smiled sadly. I don't know. I don't have time to think about things like that. My life is my company. It always has been. That sounds lonely. It is, she admitted, but it's what I chose. I built Laurent Industries from almost nothing. My father started it, but he ran it into the ground. I was 24 when he died, and the board wanted to sell. I fought them, took control. Spent the next 5 years clawing my way back to profitability. Sounds exhausting. It was. It still is. She looked down at her hands. But it's mine. I did that, and I'm proud of it. You should be. But sometimes I wonder what I gave up to get here, Isabella continued. I don't have friends, not real ones. I don't have hobbies. I haven't been on a date in 3 years. I wake up, I work, I go to sleep, and I do it all over again. Why? Because if I stop, I don't know who I am without it. Daniel understood that more than he wanted to admit. I get it. Do you? Yeah, I'm a dad and a barista. That's it. That's my whole identity. If I wasn't those things, I don't know what I'd be. Isabella met his eyes. Maybe that's why we're sitting here. What do you mean? Maybe we both need to figure out who we are outside of what we do. Daniel thought about that. It made a certain kind of sense, even if it scared him. So what now? He asked. Now we try, Isabella said, to be friends. To be honest, to be people instead of roles. That's it? That's it. Daniel wanted to believe it could be that simple, but he'd learned a long time ago that nothing was ever simple. Still, he found himself nodding. Okay, we can try. Isabella smiled, and it was genuine this time, not polite, not guarded, just happy. Thank you, she said. They stayed at the park for another hour, talking about nothing important. Favorite movies, books they'd read, places they'd been, small, ordinary things that felt monumental because they were honest. When Daniel finally checked his phone, it was almost 4. Shit, I need to pick up Emma. Where is she? After school program, I'm late. I'll walk with you. Daniel hesitated. You don't have to. I want to. They left the park together, walking quickly through the rain. The school was 6 blocks away, a squat brick building with a chain-link fence around the playground. By the time they got there, Daniel was out of breath, and Emma was one of only 3 kids left. She saw him through the fence and waved, then noticed Isabella and went very still. Daniel unlocked the gate and hurried over. Hey kiddo, sorry I'm late. Emma's eyes were locked on Isabella. Who's that? A friend. Her name's Isabella. Isabella crouched down to Emma's level, smiling. Hi, Emma. Your dad's told me a lot about you. Emma looked at Daniel, then back at Isabella, suspicion written all over her face. Are you his girlfriend? No. Isabella said quickly. Just a friend. That's what grown-ups always say. Daniel bit back a laugh. Emma, be nice. I am being nice. I'm just asking. Isabella didn't seem offended. If anything, she looked amused. You're very perceptive. I know, Emma said matter-of-factly. My dad says I'm too smart for my own good. He's probably right. Emma studied Isabella for another moment, then apparently decided she passed some internal test. Okay, you can come with us. I don't want to intrude, Isabella started. You're not intruding if I'm inviting you, Emma said with perfect 7-year-old logic. Right, Dad? Daniel looked at Isabella, who looked uncertain for the first time since he'd met her. You don't have to, he said. I know, but I'd like to, if that's okay. It wasn't okay. It was terrifying. Letting Isabella into this part of his life felt like opening a door he couldn't close again. But Emma was looking at him with those big, hopeful eyes, and he couldn't say no. Okay, he said. But we're just going home. Nothing exciting. That's fine, Isabella said. They walked back to Daniel's apartment together, Emma chattering the entire way about her day at school. She'd gotten a gold star on her spelling test. Her friend Madison had brought cupcakes for her birthday. The class hamster had escaped again, and they'd found him in the art supplies. Isabella listened to all of it with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at the right moments. Daniel watched her interact with his daughter and felt something shift inside him, something dangerous. When they got to the apartment building, Daniel hesitated at the door. It's not much. I don't care, Isabella said. He led them up 3 flights of stairs. The elevator had been broken for a month, and unlocked the door to his apartment. Emma ran inside immediately, dropping her backpack and kicking off her shoes. Isabella stepped inside slowly, looking around. Daniel tried to see the place through her eyes, the worn couch with the sagging cushions, the kitchen table he'd found on the street, and refinished himself. The walls that needed paint, the radiator that clanked. It's nice, Isabella said. You don't have to lie. I'm not. It feels like a home. Emma reappeared from her room, having changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt 3 sizes too big. Can Isabella stay for dinner? Emma, please? We're having spaghetti. I can help. Daniel looked at Isabella helplessly. You really don't have to. I know, she said, but I'd like to. If you'll have me. He should say no. Should keep this boundary in place, but Emma was already pulling Isabella toward the kitchen, and Isabella was laughing, and it felt right in a way that scared him. Okay, he said, but you're getting the full experience, boxed pasta and jarred sauce. Sounds perfect. It wasn't perfect. The kitchen was cramped, and Emma knocked over the cheese grater twice, and Daniel burned the garlic bread because he got distracted talking to Isabella. But it was real. Messy and chaotic and real. They ate at the small kitchen table, Emma sitting between them, swinging her legs and telling Isabella about her favorite dinosaurs. Isabella asked questions like she actually cared about the difference between a brachiosaurus and a brontosaurus. After dinner, Emma begged to show Isabella her room. Daniel tried to intervene, but Isabella was already following Emma down the hall. He cleaned up the dishes, listening to Emma's voice chattering away. When he finished, he found them sitting on Emma's floor building something elaborate out of Legos. This is the castle, Emma was explaining, and this is where the princess lives. But she doesn't need rescuing because she's also a ninja. Obviously, Isabella said seriously, all the best princesses are ninjas. Emma beamed. Exactly. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching them. Isabella looked completely different here, sitting cross-legged on the floor in jeans and a sweater, helping his daughter build a Lego castle. Not like a CEO, not like a billionaire, just like a person. Emma yawned suddenly, big and jaw-cracking. Bedtime, kiddo, Daniel said. But we're not done yet. We can finish tomorrow, Isabella said gently. I promise. Emma's eyes lit up. You'll come back? Isabella glanced at Daniel, uncertain. He nodded slightly. If your dad says it's okay, then yes, Isabella said. It's okay, right, Dad? Daniel couldn't say no to that face. Yeah, it's okay. Emma hugged Isabella suddenly, fiercely. Isabella looked startled for a moment, then hugged her back just as tight. I like you, Emma whispered. I like you too, Isabella whispered back. When Emma let go, her eyes were already drooping. Daniel ushered her through her bedtime routine, teeth brushed, pajamas on, rabbit retrieved from wherever she'd left it, and tucked her into bed. "Is Isabella your girlfriend?" Emma asked again, her voice sleepy. "No, baby, just a friend." "But you like her." "What makes you say that?" "You smile different when she's here." Daniel's chest tightened. "Get some sleep." "Love you, Dad." "Love you too." He kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked open the way she liked it. When he came back to the living room, Isabella was standing by the window, looking out at the rain. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said quietly. "Thank you for staying. She's wonderful." "Emma." "Yeah, she is." Isabella turned to face him. "You're doing a good job with her. I know I said that before, but I mean it. She's happy, confident, kind. That's because of you." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. "I should go," Isabella said. "It's late. I'll call you a car." "I already did. It's downstairs." Of course she did. They walked to the door together. Isabella put on her shoes, and Daniel handed her the jacket she'd draped over the couch. "Today was nice," she said. "Really nice." "Yeah, it was." She hesitated, like she wanted to say something else. Finally, she just said, "Can I see you again? Both of you?" Daniel knew he should think about it, should be careful, but he found himself saying, "Yeah, you can." Isabella smiled, warm and genuine. "Good." She left, and Daniel stood in the doorway, watching her walk down the stairs. At the bottom, she turned and waved. He waved back. When the door closed, he leaned against it and let out a long breath. This was going to complicate everything, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't mind. The next few weeks fell into a strange, unexpected rhythm. Isabella started showing up at the coffee shop 2 or 3 times a week, always in jeans and simple clothes, always with a book. They'd talk during Daniel's breaks, short conversations about nothing important that somehow felt important anyway. On weekends, she'd come to the apartment. Sometimes they'd cook together while Emma helped, making a mess of the kitchen and laughing when things inevitably went wrong. Sometimes they'd go to the park, all 3 of them, and Isabella would push Emma on the swings while Daniel watched, something warm and complicated blooming in his chest. Emma adored her, started asking when Isabella was coming over, saving her best drawings to show her, requesting that Isabella be the one to read her bedtime stories when she was there. And Isabella seemed to love it, all of it, the chaos and the noise and the normalcy of it. But there were moments when Daniel would catch her checking her phone, her expression tightening, and he'd remember who she really was, what she was going back to when she left his apartment. They didn't talk about it, didn't talk about the fact that she was a billionaire and he was barely scraping by, didn't talk about what this was becoming. Until one Saturday afternoon when everything shifted. They were at the park, Emma playing on the jungle gym while Daniel and Isabella sat on a bench. It was a perfect fall day, the kind where the air was crisp and the leaves were just starting to turn. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. "Always. Why are you really here? And don't say it's because you want friendship. There are a million ways you could make friends. Ways that don't involve sitting in a coffee shop for hours or playing Legos on my floor." Isabella was quiet for a long moment. "You want the truth?" "Yeah. Because I don't feel like I'm performing when I'm with you," she said. "I don't feel like I have to be Isabella Laurent, CEO. I can just be. And I haven't felt that way in 10 years. Daniel looked at her. "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know." "I know, I'm sorry." "I didn't say I minded," he said carefully. "I just want to make sure you understand what you're getting. I'm not some escape fantasy. This is my actual life. The struggle and the stress and the bills I can barely pay. That's real." "I know it's real," Isabella said. "That's why I keep coming back." "What happens when you get bored? When the novelty wears off? Is that what you think this is? Novelty?" "I don't know what else to call it." Isabella turned to face him fully. "Daniel, I'm not going to pretend this makes sense. I'm not going to pretend I understand why I feel more at home in your cramped apartment than I do in my penthouse. But I do, and I don't want to stop." "What about Emma?" Daniel asked. "She's already attached to you. If you disappear, it's going to hurt her." "Then I won't disappear." "You say that now." "I mean it." Daniel wanted to believe her, but he'd been disappointed enough times to know that people said a lot of things they didn't mean. "I need you to be sure," he said. Because if you're not, if this is just some phase you're going through, then I need you to walk away now, before it goes any further. Isabella's eyes were steady on his. I'm sure. Are you? Really? Yes. Daniel held her gaze, searching for doubt. He didn't find any. Okay, he said finally. Then I'm in. Whatever this is, I'm in. Relief washed over Isabella's face. She reached for his hand, hesitated, then took it anyway. Her fingers were warm against his. They sat like that for a while, holding hands on a park bench while Emma played, and Daniel felt the last of his walls start to crumble. This was terrifying, but it was also the most alive he'd felt in years. Emma called for them from the top of the slide, and they dropped hands quickly, like teenagers caught doing something they shouldn't. Daniel felt the loss of contact immediately, a coldness where her warmth had been. Watch me, Dad. Watch. I'm watching, he called back. Emma went down the slide backward, laughing the whole way. When she reached the bottom, she ran back around to do it again. Isabella was quiet beside him, staring at her hands. That was okay, right? Holding your hand? Yeah, Daniel said. It was okay. I don't want to push too fast. You're not. But even as he said it, Daniel felt the weight of what was happening settle over him. They were crossing a line, moving from friendship into something else, something he didn't know how to name yet. And once they crossed it, there was no going back. The week that followed was normal on the surface. Daniel went to work, picked up Emma from school, made dinner, helped with homework. The same routine he'd had for years. But underneath, everything felt different. Charged. Like he was waiting for something to happen. Isabella texted him more now. Little things throughout the day. A photo of something that made her think of Emma. A question about what he was doing. Nothing important, but Daniel found himself checking his phone more than he should, waiting for her name to appear on the screen. On Tuesday, she sent him a message that made his stomach drop. I have to go to San Francisco for a conference. 3 days. I leave tomorrow. Daniel stared at the text for a long moment before replying. Okay. Safe travels. Will you miss me? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. The honest answer was yes, he would miss her. He'd gotten used to her presence, to the way she showed up at the coffee shop and sat in the corner with her book, to the way Emma's face lit up when Isabella walked through the door. Emma will, he typed finally. What about you? Daniel closed his eyes. This was dangerous territory, but he was already in too deep to lie. Yeah, I will too. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I'll call you when I land. She did. Daniel was in the middle of giving Emma a bath when his phone rang. Emma was covered in bubbles, making a beard out of soap suds, and he almost didn't answer. But he did. Hey, he said, wedging the phone between his ear and shoulder. Hi. Isabella's voice sounded tired. Is this a bad time? I'm giving Emma a bath. Hold on. He switched to speakerphone. Okay, you're on speaker. Say hi, Emma. Hi, Isabella, Emma shouted, splashing water everywhere. Hi, sweetheart. Are you being good for your dad? Always, Emma said, which was a lie, but Daniel let it slide. They talked for a few minutes, Emma doing most of the talking, telling Isabella about a project she was working on at school. When Emma finally got distracted by her bath toys, Daniel took the phone off speaker. Sorry about that, he said, walking into the hallway. Don't be. I love hearing her voice. How was the flight? Long, boring. I watched 2 terrible movies and answered 100 emails. Sounds awful. It was. She paused. I miss you guys already. Daniel leaned against the wall, something warm spreading through his chest. We miss you too. Daniel. Yeah? When I get back, can we talk? Really talk? His heart skipped. About what? About this. About us. About what we're doing. Okay, he said quietly. Yeah, we can talk. They stayed on the phone for another 20 minutes, just talking about nothing. Isabella told him about the hotel, about the view from her room. Daniel told her about the broken dishwasher in the coffee shop and how Marcus had tried to fix it and made it worse. When they finally hung up, Daniel stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at his phone. This was real. Whatever this was, it was real, and that scared the hell out of him. The 3 days Isabella was gone felt longer than they should have. Emma asked about her every night.
When's Isabella coming back? Daniel didn't have a good answer. He said soon, but soon felt like forever. On Thursday night, Daniel was closing up the coffee shop when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Is this Daniel Brooks? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. Yeah, who's this?
My name is Catherine Wells. I'm the CFO of Laurent Industries. I'm calling about Isabella Laurent.
Daniel's stomach dropped. Is she okay?
She's fine, but I need to speak with you about your relationship with her.
My relationship?
Daniel's voice went cold.
What the hell is this?
Mr. Brooks, I'm going to be direct. Ms. Laurent has been spending a significant amount of time with you and your daughter over the past several weeks. The board has concerns.
Concerns about what?
About her judgment, about potential conflicts of interest, about what your intentions might be. Daniel laughed, sharp and bitter. My intentions? Lady, I work at a coffee shop. I'm not trying to get anything from her. That may be true, but you have to understand how this looks. A woman in Ms. Laurent's position spending time with someone of your background. It raises questions. My background, Daniel repeated slowly. You mean poor. Catherine didn't deny it. The board wants assurances that you're not taking advantage of her. Taking advantage? Daniel's voice rose. She came to me. She keeps coming back. I didn't ask for any of this. Nevertheless, we need to protect Ms. Laurent's interests and the company's interests. Does Isabella know you're calling me? There was a pause. No. Then we're done here. Daniel hung up. His hands were shaking. He stood there in the empty coffee shop, fury and humiliation burning through him in equal measure. They thought he was using her, thought he was some kind of gold digger, playing the long game. The idea made him sick. He grabbed his jacket and locked up, his mind racing. He should have known this would happen, should have known that people in Isabella's world would never accept someone like him. He'd been stupid to think this could work. When he got home, Mrs. Alvarez took one look at his face and asked if he was okay. Fine, he lied. Just tired. Emma was already asleep. Daniel checked on her, then went to his room and sat on the edge of his bed, his phone in his hand. He should call Isabella, tell her what happened. But what would he say? That her CFO thought he was a parasite? That the people around her were already trying to push him out? He set the phone down and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Maybe Catherine Wells was right. Maybe this was a mistake. Isabella came back on Friday afternoon. She texted Daniel from the airport, asking if she could come by after he got off work. He said yes, even though part of him wanted to say no. When she showed up at his apartment that evening, Emma launched herself at Isabella before she'd even made it through the door. You're back. I missed you so much, Isabella caught her laughing. I missed you too, Emma. Daniel watched from the kitchen, his expression carefully neutral. Isabella met his eyes over Emma's head, and her smile faltered. Hey, she said softly. Hey. Emma dragged Isabella to her room to show her the school project she'd been working on. Daniel stayed in the kitchen, making coffee he didn't want, trying to figure out what to say. 20 minutes later, Isabella came back alone. She fell asleep. I think she exhausted herself being excited. Yeah, she does that. Isabella sat at the kitchen table studying him. What's wrong? Nothing. Daniel, he set the coffee pot down harder than he meant to. Your CFO called me. Isabella went very still. What? Catherine Wells called me Tuesday night, wanted to make sure I wasn't taking advantage of you. She what? Isabella's voice was sharp, angry. She had no right. She said the board has concerns, Daniel interrupted, about your judgment, about me, about what I might want from you. Isabella stood up, her hands clenched into fists. I'm going to kill her. Are they wrong? Daniel asked quietly. She turned to look at him. What? Are they wrong about this being a bad idea? About us being from different worlds? Don't, Isabella said. Don't do that. Don't let them get in your head. They're already in my head, Isabella. Because they're right. This doesn't make sense. You're a billionaire. I'm barely making rent. What the hell are we doing? We're trying, Isabella said fiercely. We're trying to be happy. Isn't that enough? I don't know. Is it?
They stared at each other across the kitchen. The air felt thick, heavy with everything unsaid. I don't fit in your world, Daniel said finally, and you don't fit in mine. Eventually, that's going to matter. It doesn't have to.
Yes, it does. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Do you know what it's like, knowing that everyone around you thinks I'm using you, that they're waiting for me to screw up to prove them right? I don't care what they think.
Well, I do, because they're not completely wrong. You swoop in here with your money and your success, and yeah, it's nice. It's nice having you around. It's nice watching Emma light up when she sees you. But what happens when this ends? When you get tired of playing house and go back to your real life? Isabella flinched like he'd hit her. Is that what you think this is? Playing house? I don't know what this is, Daniel said. That's the problem. I'm falling in love with you, Isabella said suddenly. That's what this is. The words hit him like a truck.
He stared at her, speechless. I'm falling in love with you and with Emma, Isabella continued, her voice shaking, and I know that's terrifying. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's true. And I'm not going to apologize for it. Daniel couldn't breathe. Isabella.
I know you're scared, she said. I'm scared too. But I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to. This is crazy. I know. We barely know each other. I know. You're a billionaire and I'm… Stop, Isabella said, stepping closer. Stop listing all the reasons this can't work and just tell me how you feel. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the truth written all over her face. She meant it, every word.
And the terrifying part was, he felt it too. I'm falling in love with you too, he said quietly, and that scares me more than anything. Isabella closed the distance between them and took his hands. Then let's be scared together. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was still a terrible idea, but with her standing there, looking at him like he was the only thing in the world that mattered, he couldn't find the words. Okay, he said finally. Okay. She kissed him then, soft and careful, like she was afraid he might break. Daniel kissed her back, his hands coming up to cup her face, and for a moment, everything else fell away. When they pulled apart, Isabella was smiling. I'm going to fire Catherine. Don't, Daniel said. She was just doing her job. Her job isn't to harass you. She was protecting you. I get it. Isabella's expression softened. You're too good. I'm really not. You are. She kissed him again, quick and light. And I'm not letting you go. They stood there in his cramped kitchen, holding each other, and Daniel let himself believe it might actually work. The next few weeks were complicated. Isabella had to deal with her board, who were apparently furious that she'd been keeping a relationship from them. She came back from one meeting with tight shoulders and exhaustion written all over her face. That bad? Daniel asked. They threatened to force a vote, remove me as CEO. His stomach dropped. Because of me? Because they're control freaks who don't like that I have a life outside the company. She collapsed on his couch. I told them if they tried it, I'd quit and take half the executive team with me. Isabella, I'm not losing you because they're uncomfortable, she said firmly. End of discussion. But it wasn't the end. The board kept pushing. Catherine started calling again, this time asking Daniel to sign a non-disclosure agreement, to agree to a financial arrangement that would protect both parties. Daniel refused, every time. They're trying to make you a liability, Isabella said one night. They were sitting on his couch, Emma asleep in her room. If they can paint you as someone who's after my money, they can use it against me. So what do we do? Isabella was quiet for a long moment. I introduce you, properly, to everyone. The board, the investors, the press. I show them you're real, that we're real. That sounds like a nightmare. It will be, Isabella admitted, but it's the only way to stop them from controlling the narrative. Daniel thought about it, thought about what it would mean, stepping into her world fully. The scrutiny, the judgment, the constant feeling of being out of place. But he also thought about losing her, about going back to a life where she wasn't part of it. Okay, he said. Let's do it. The first event was a charity gala. Black tie, 500 guests, photographers everywhere. Isabella sent a tailor to Daniel's apartment to fit him for a suit he couldn't afford. When the man left, Daniel stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing himself.
You look handsome, Dad, Emma said from the doorway. I look ridiculous. No, you don't. You look like a prince. He smiled despite himself. Thanks, kiddo. The gala was worse than he'd imagined. The moment they walked in, cameras started flashing. Isabella held his arm, smiling at people Daniel didn't recognize, introducing him as her partner. The word felt strange in his mouth when he had to repeat it. People were polite to his face, but he could see the calculation in their eyes, could hear the whispers that followed them across the room. One man, a board member named Richard, cornered them by the bar. So you're the infamous Daniel Brooks. I don't know about infamous, Daniel said. You've certainly made waves. Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Tell me, what is it you do? I work at a coffee shop. How quaint? Isabella's hand tightened on Daniel's arm. Richard, if you have something to say it. I'm just curious what a man in your position brings to a relationship with someone like Isabella. Daniel felt his temper rise, but he kept his voice level. I bring honesty, respect, and I don't treat her like a business transaction. Richard's smile froze. Careful, Mr. Brooks. You're out of your depth here. Maybe, Daniel said, but at least I know how to treat people like people instead of assets. Isabella steered him away before things could escalate. I'm sorry, Richard's an asshole. They all are. Not all of them, but Daniel wasn't convinced. The rest of the night was a blur of forced conversations and fake smiles. By the time they left, he felt exhausted and dirty, like he'd been performing in a play he hadn't auditioned for. In the car ride home, Isabella was quiet. Say it, Daniel said. Say what? Whatever you're thinking. She sighed. You hated it. Yeah, I did. I'm sorry, I know it's not your world. It's not, Daniel interrupted. And I don't know if I can keep doing this, pretending to be someone I'm not. Isabella looked at him, hurt, flashing across her face. I'm not asking you to pretend. Aren't you? Because that's what it felt like tonight. Like I was supposed to play the part of your respectable boyfriend so your board would get off your back. That's not fair. Isn't it? They didn't talk for the rest of the drive. When the car dropped Daniel off at his building, Isabella didn't get out. I'll call you tomorrow, she said quietly. Yeah, okay. He went inside feeling like they'd just taken 10 steps backward. The next morning, Daniel woke up to his phone ringing. It was still dark outside, barely 5 a.m. He grabbed the phone, groggy and confused. Hello? Mr. Brooks, this is Catherine Wells. He was instantly awake. What do you want? I'm calling to inform you that someone has leaked your relationship with Ms. Laurent to the press. It's going to be front-page news by this afternoon. Daniel's stomach dropped. What? I wanted to give you advance warning. You're going to be under significant scrutiny. I'd recommend you don't speak to any reporters. Did you do this? Daniel demanded. No, Catherine said, and she actually sounded genuine. I didn't, but someone on the board did. They're trying to force Isabella's hand by making me look like trash in the media. Yes. Daniel hung up and immediately called Isabella. She answered on the first ring. I know, she said before he could speak. Catherine just called me. I'm handling it. How? I'm calling a press conference. I'm going to tell the truth. That we're together, that I love you, and that anyone who has a problem with it can go to hell. Isabella, your job. I don't care about my job, she said fiercely. I care about you. You can't mean that. I do. Daniel, I spent 10 years building this company, and it's cost me everything. My relationships, my happiness, my life. I'm not losing you, too. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. This is exactly what I was afraid of. I know, but I'm not backing down. Are you? He thought about it. Thought about the easy thing, which would be to walk away, to let her have her life back without the complication of him and Emma. But he also thought about the past few weeks, about the way Isabella laughed at Emma's jokes, about the way she held his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, about the way she looked at him like he was worth something. No, he said finally, I'm not backing down either. Then we face this together. Together, Daniel agreed. The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon. Daniel watched it from the coffee shop, Marcus standing beside him, both of them staring at the TV mounted in the corner.
Isabella stood at a podium, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. She looked calm, composed. Every inch the CEO she was. "I'm here to address the recent speculation about my personal life," she said. "Yes, I'm in a relationship with Daniel Brooks. Yes, he works at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. And yes, I love him and his daughter very much. If that's a problem for anyone, I don't particularly care." The reporters erupted with questions, but Isabella held up a hand. "I've spent the last 10 years sacrificing everything for this company. My time, my energy, my personal happiness. I've done it because I believed in Laurent Industries. I still do. But I also believe that I deserve a life outside of this boardroom. And if my board disagrees, they're welcome to try to replace me. I don't think they'll find it as easy as they imagine." She walked away from the podium without taking questions. Marcus whistled low. "Your girlfriend's a badass."
"Yeah," Daniel said quietly. "She is." His phone rang. Isabella. "Did you watch?" she asked. "Yeah." "How'd I do?" "You were perfect." She let out a shaky breath. "I'm terrified." "Me too." "Worth it, though. Right?" Daniel smiled. "Yeah, worth it."
The fallout from the press conference was immediate and brutal. By the next morning, Daniel's face was on the front page of 3 major newspapers. The headlines were worse than he'd imagined. "Billionaire's blue-collar boyfriend," read one. "From coffee shop to penthouse, the Daniel Brooks story," said another. The worst one simply asked, "What does he really want?" Daniel stopped reading after the first few articles. They painted him as either an opportunist or a charity case, and he didn't know which was more insulting. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Numbers he didn't recognize, one after another. He turned it off eventually, but not before seeing dozens of missed calls and text messages from people he hadn't spoken to in years. Old friends, distant relatives. Even Sarah, Emma's mother, sent a message asking if he needed anything. He deleted it without responding. The coffee shop became a circus. Reporters showed up asking for interviews. Customers took photos of him when they thought he wasn't looking. Marcus had to kick out 2 photographers who tried to sneak in through the back. "This is insane," Marcus said, flipping the sign to "closed" 2 hours early. "You're not actually famous. You just know someone famous." "Tell that to them," Daniel muttered, watching another reporter pace outside the window. "How's Emma handling it?" Daniel's chest tightened. "She doesn't know yet. I've been trying to keep her away from it." "Good luck with that. Kids at school are going to talk." Daniel knew Marcus was right. He'd already gotten a call from Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, asking if everything was okay at home. Some of the other parents had been asking questions, and Emma had started noticing people whispering when they picked up their kids. That night, Daniel sat Emma down at the kitchen table. She was coloring, humming to herself, completely oblivious to the chaos swirling around them. "Hey, kiddo, we need to talk." Emma looked up, instantly wary. "Am I in trouble?" "No, nothing like that." Daniel pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "But some stuff is happening, and I need you to hear it from me first." "What stuff?" "You know how Isabella and I have been spending a lot of time together?"
"Yeah, because you're dating." She said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Right, well, some people have been writing about it in newspapers and on the internet, and they might say some things that aren't very nice." Emma frowned. "About you?" "About me. About Isabella. About us. Why would they say mean things?"
Daniel struggled to find the right words. "Because Isabella is very successful and has a lot of money, and some people think that's the only reason I like her." "That's stupid," Emma said immediately. "You like her because she's nice, and she reads me stories, and she makes you smile." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, that's exactly why I like her." "So those people are wrong." "They are, but they might not stop saying it, and kids at school might hear about it and say stuff to you." Emma shrugged. "Kids at school are already mean sometimes. Madison said my shoes were ugly last week." "This might be different, Em." "I don't care what they say," Emma said with 7-year-old certainty. "Isabella's the best, and so are you. They're just jealous." Daniel pulled her into a hug, blinking back the sting in his eyes. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't always notice." He laughed despite himself. "You're right. I'm sorry." "It's okay." She pulled back and looked at him seriously. Dad, are you and Isabella going to get married? The question caught him completely off guard. We haven't talked about that. But you want to, right? Emma, because I think you should. Then she could live here and read me stories every night. Daniel didn't know what to say. Marriage hadn't even crossed his mind. They'd only been together a few months, and most of that had been spent navigating a minefield of public opinion and corporate politics. But looking at Emma's hopeful face, he realized she'd already made Isabella part of their family in her mind. And the scary thing was, so had he. Let's just take it one day at a time, okay? He said finally. Emma seemed satisfied with that. She went back to her coloring, and Daniel sat there, his mind spinning. Marriage. The idea should have terrified him, should have seemed ridiculous, but it didn't. Isabella came over later that night after Emma was asleep. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Rough day? Daniel asked, pulling her inside. You could say that. She collapsed on the couch. The board called an emergency meeting. 3 hours of them yelling at me about optics and brand image and shareholder confidence. What did you say? I told them my personal life was none of their business, and if they wanted to waste time discussing it, that was their problem. She rubbed her face. Then Richard tried to force a vote of no confidence. Daniel's stomach dropped. What happened? Catherine shut him down. Turns out she's been documenting every inappropriate thing the board's done for the past 5 years. She threatened to leak it all if they tried to remove me. I thought Catherine hated me. She doesn't hate you. She's just protective of the company. But apparently she hates Richard more. Isabella smiled faintly. She told me after the meeting that if you made me this willing to fight back, you must be doing something right. Daniel sat down beside her. That's probably the nicest thing anyone said about me in the past 48 hours. It's been that bad? The reporters won't leave me alone. They showed up at the coffee shop at Emma's school. One guy tried to follow me home. Isabella's expression darkened. I'll call security, get you some protection. I don't want bodyguards, Isabella. Then what do you want? I want this to stop, Daniel said, his voice rising. I want to be able to walk down the street without cameras in my face. I want Emma to go to school without being stared at. I want our lives back. I know. I'm sorry. You keep saying that, but it doesn't change anything. Isabella was quiet for a moment. Do you want to end this? Us? No, Daniel said immediately. But I don't know how much more of this I can take. How much more Emma can take. It'll die down, Isabella said. Once they realize there's no scandal, no secret agenda, they'll move on to the next story. And if they don't, then we deal with it together. Daniel wanted to believe her, but he was tired of fighting, tired of feeling like he was drowning. I talked to Emma tonight, he said. Warned her about what people might say. How'd she take it? Better than me. She said people are jealous and we should ignore them. Isabella smiled. She's a smart kid. She asked if we're going to get married. The words hung in the air between them. Isabella's smile faltered, replaced by something more complicated, uncertain. What did you tell her? She asked carefully. That we're taking it one day at a time. Good answer. Is it? Daniel looked at her. Because I don't know what we're doing anymore. Are we dating? Are we serious? Are we just seeing where this goes? What do you want us to be? Isabella asked. I want us to be real, Daniel said. Not some media circus, not some corporate problem to manage. Just two people who care about each other. We are real. Are we? Because it doesn't feel real when I'm dodging reporters and your board is trying to force you out because of me. Isabella took his hand. Daniel, look at me. He did. This is the most real thing in my life, she said. You and Emma. Coming here, being with you, feeling like I can breathe for the first time in years. That's real. The rest of it, the media, the board, the scrutiny, that's just noise. It's loud noise. I know, but I'm not giving up. Not on this. Not on us. Daniel squeezed her hand. I'm scared, Isabella. Scared that we're going to hurt each other. Scared that Emma's going to get caught in the crossfire. Me too, she admitted. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. He kissed her then, soft and slow, and for a moment the rest of the world disappeared. When they pulled apart, Isabella rested her forehead against his.
I love you. I love you too, Daniel said, even when this is hard, especially when it's hard. They sat there for a long time, holding each other in the quiet of his small apartment, and Daniel let himself believe they could make it through this. The next few weeks were a test of that belief. The media attention didn't die down. If anything, it got worse. Someone dug up old photos of Daniel from high school, posted them online with mocking captions. An ex-girlfriend he'd dated for 3 months 6 years ago sold a story to a tabloid claiming he'd always been ambitious and calculating. It was complete bullshit, but people believed it anyway. Emma started having nightmares. She'd wake up crying, saying kids at school were being mean, asking questions she didn't know how to answer. Daniel held her while she cried and felt completely helpless. Isabella tried to help. She offered to pay for a private school, somewhere Emma could escape the attention. Daniel refused. He didn't want to uproot Emma's entire life because of his relationship. They fought about it. Their first real fight. "You're being stubborn," Isabella said. "I'm being a father," Daniel shot back. "Emma's already dealing with enough change. I'm not pulling her out of the only school she's ever known." "Then what's your solution? Just let her suffer?" "She's not suffering. She's uncomfortable. There's a difference." "Is there?" Isabella's voice was sharp. "Because from where I'm standing, she's crying herself to sleep and you're too proud to accept help." "This isn't about pride." "Yes, it is. You won't let me help because you don't want to feel like you owe me something." "Maybe I don't want my daughter growing up thinking money solves everything," Daniel said. Isabella flinched like he'd slapped her. "Is that what you think I believe?" "I don't know what you believe. Your solution to every problem is to throw money at it. That's not fair." "Isn't it? Private schools, security, lawyers. You want to fix this by making it go away. But some things can't be fixed with money." They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the space between them feeling wider than it ever had. "I'm trying to help," Isabella said quietly. "I'm trying to protect the people I love." "I know," Daniel said, his anger deflating. "But I need to protect Emma my way, even if it's not the easiest way." Isabella nodded slowly. "Okay, I can respect that." They apologized. Made up. But the fight left a mark, a reminder that they were still figuring out how to be together when their worlds were so different. Things came to a head 3 weeks later. Daniel was at work when his phone rang. Emma's school. His heart immediately started racing. "Mr. Brooks, this is Principal Martinez. I'm calling because there was an incident with Emma today." "What kind of incident? Is she hurt?" "She's fine physically, but she got into an altercation with another student." Daniel's mind went blank. "Emma got into a fight?" "The other student was teasing her about you and Ms. Laurent. Emma pushed her." "She pushed her?" "Yes. The other student fell and scraped her knee. Emma's in my office now. Can you come pick her up?" Daniel left work immediately. When he got to the school, Emma was sitting outside the principal's office, her arms crossed, her face set in a stubborn expression he recognized from the mirror. "Emma," he said quietly. She looked up at him and her expression crumbled. "I'm sorry, Dad." He sat down beside her. "What happened?" "Madison said you were only with Isabella for her money. She said everyone knows it. And I told her to shut up, but she kept saying it, so I pushed her." Daniel closed his eyes. "Emma, you can't push people, even when they say things that make you angry. But she was lying about you." "I know, but pushing her doesn't make the lie go away. It just gets you in trouble." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I hate this. I hate that people say mean things about you. You're the best dad in the world, and they don't even know you." Daniel pulled her into a hug, his own eyes stinging. "I know, baby. I know." Principal Martinez was understanding but firm. Emma was suspended for 2 days. Daniel took her home, called Mrs. Alvarez to watch her, and went back to work feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. When he told Isabella that night, she was quiet for a long time. "This is my fault," she said finally. "It's not." "It is. If we hadn't—" "Don't," Daniel interrupted. "Don't finish that sentence." "But it's true. Emma's getting hurt because of me. Emma's getting hurt because people are cruel. That's not on you." Isabella shook her head. "Maybe we should take a break, just until things calm down." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Is that what you want?" "No, but I don't want Emma to suffer because of us. Emma's suffering because of other people's judgment. Breaking up won't change that. The story's already out there. Then what do we do? Daniel didn't have an answer. They sat in silence, the weight of the question pressing down on both of them. Finally, Daniel said, "We keep going. We show Emma that you don't run away when things get hard. You stand your ground. You fight for what matters." "And we matter?" "Yeah," Daniel said. "We matter." Isabella leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding on tight. The next morning, Daniel woke up to his phone buzzing with notifications. Something had happened overnight, something big. He opened Twitter and saw Isabella's name trending. His stomach dropped, bracing for another hit piece, another scandal. But it wasn't a scandal, it was a statement from Isabella. She'd posted a long thread starting with, "I've stayed quiet while people speculated about my relationship. I'm done being quiet." She went on to talk about Daniel, about who he really was. Not the caricature the media had painted, but the man she knew, a father who worked 2 jobs to give his daughter a good life, a man who treated strangers with kindness, someone who'd never asked her for anything except honesty. She talked about Emma, about how smart and brave and kind she was, about how she'd welcomed Isabella into their lives without hesitation. And she talked about herself, about how lonely she'd been before she met Daniel, how she'd been drowning in her own success, surrounded by people who only saw her as a means to an end, how Daniel had reminded her what it felt like to be human. The thread ended with, "I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I love Daniel Brooks and his daughter. And if that costs me my company, my reputation, my career, so be it. Some things are worth more than success. I'm finally learning that." Daniel read it 3 times, his hands shaking. His phone rang. "Isabella." "Did you see it?" she asked. "Yeah. I probably should have asked you first, but I was tired of letting other people control the story." "It's perfect," Daniel said, his voice rough. "You're perfect." "I'm really not." "You are to me." There was a pause. Then Isabella said, "I meant what I wrote, all of it." "I know. I'm all in, Daniel, completely. I need you to know that." "I'm all in too," Daniel said. "I have been for a while." "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt like they might actually make it through this. The response to Isabella's post was overwhelming. It went viral within hours. Thousands of people shared it, commented on it, defended her. The narrative started to shift. Instead of Daniel being a gold digger, he became a working-class hero. Instead of Isabella being naive, she became brave. It wasn't perfect. There were still plenty of people who criticized them, who said it wouldn't last. But the overwhelming majority of the response was supportive, sympathetic, human. The pressure from the board eased. Richard resigned quietly, and Catherine was promoted to COO. The media moved on to the next scandal, and slowly, carefully, Daniel and Isabella built a life together. Not a perfect one. There were still hard days, still moments when the differences between their worlds felt insurmountable. But they kept choosing each other, kept showing up, kept fighting. And that, Daniel was learning, was what love actually looked like. Not some fairy tale, not some perfect romance, just 2 imperfect people refusing to give up on each other. 3 months after Isabella's post went viral, Daniel woke up to find her side of the bed empty. It was a Saturday morning, early enough that gray light was just starting to filter through the curtains. He could hear voices in the kitchen, Emma's bright chatter and Isabella's lower, warmer responses. He lay there for a moment, listening. This had become their routine. Isabella stayed over most weekends now, and Emma had stopped asking when she was coming because she was always there. They'd fallen into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Almost. Daniel got up, pulled on a t-shirt, and walked into the kitchen. Emma was sitting at the counter in her pajamas, swinging her legs, while Isabella stood at the stove making pancakes. She'd gotten better at it over the past few months, though she still burned them more often than not. "Morning," Daniel said. Isabella turned, smiling. She was wearing one of his old sweatshirts, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no designer clothes. Just her. "Morning. Coffee's ready." He poured himself a cup and sat next to Emma. "What are you 2 talking about?" "Isabella's going to teach me how to code," Emma announced. "Is she now?" "She said it's important to learn technology early, and that girls can be programmers too." "Girls can be anything," Isabella corrected, flipping a pancake.
But yes, I thought we could start with some basics, if that's okay with you. Daniel looked at her, at the careful way she asked permission, always conscious of not overstepping. She'd gotten better at that too. Yeah, he said. That's okay with me. Emma beamed. Can we start today? After breakfast, Isabella said. And after you brush your teeth. I saw you skip that step earlier. Emma's face fell. How'd you know? Because I'm very smart. Now go. Emma grumbled but slid off the stool and headed to the bathroom. When she was gone, Isabella turned to Daniel. Too much? She asked. No, she needs someone to call her on her stuff. I can't be the only one. Isabella set a plate of slightly burnt pancakes in front of him. I'm trying not to act like her parent. I know I'm not. You're not acting like her parent. You're acting like someone who cares about her. There's a difference. Is there? Daniel reached for her hand. Yeah, there is. They'd had versions of this conversation before. Isabella constantly worried about boundaries, about taking up too much space in Emma's life. Daniel kept trying to tell her that Emma needed her, that she wasn't replacing anyone because there was no one to replace. Sarah hadn't called in 4 months, not even for Emma's birthday. Isabella had been there for the birthday instead. She'd helped Daniel throw a party at the apartment, invited Emma's friends, brought a cake from an expensive bakery that Emma declared was okay, but not as good as Dad's. She'd stayed late to help clean up, and when Emma fell asleep that night, she'd told Daniel it was the best day she'd had in years. That was when Daniel started to realize something had shifted. This wasn't temporary anymore. This wasn't just dating. This was building a life together. And that terrified him as much as it filled him with hope. After breakfast, Isabella set up her laptop at the kitchen table and started showing Emma basic coding concepts. Daniel cleaned up, listening to Isabella's patient explanations and Emma's endless questions. When Emma finally got frustrated and wanted to quit, Isabella didn't push. She just said they'd try again tomorrow, and Emma seemed satisfied with that. Later, when Emma was watching cartoons in the living room, Isabella found Daniel in the bedroom, folding laundry. Can we talk? She asked. His stomach tightened. Those words never led anywhere good. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I've been thinking about something. Okay. She sat on the edge of the bed and he could see she was nervous. Isabella was never nervous. The coffee shop, she said, where you work. I know the owner's been trying to sell it. Daniel froze, a t-shirt halfway folded in his hands. How do you know that? Marcus mentioned it a few weeks ago. He's worried about what happens if it sells, if the new owner keeps the staff. It's not going to sell. Nobody wants to buy a failing coffee shop in Brooklyn. I do, Isabella said quietly. Daniel stared at her. What? I want to buy it, and I want to renovate it, make it into something better, something sustainable. Isabella, before you say no, just listen. She stood up, started pacing. I've been looking at the numbers. The location is good. The customer base is loyal. It just needs capital. Better equipment, some marketing, maybe expand the menu. It could be profitable. You want to buy my workplace, Daniel said slowly. I want to invest in something that matters to you, something that could give you stability. Give Emma stability. I can't let you do that. Why not? Because it's charity, Daniel said, his voice rising. You're trying to fix my problems with money again. It's not charity. It's a business investment. Bullshit. You don't need another investment. You have billions. You're doing this because you feel sorry for me. Isabella stopped pacing, her eyes flashing. I'm doing this because I love you and I want to build a future with you. And part of that future is making sure you're not working yourself to death at a job that barely pays your rent. I've been managing fine. You've been drowning, Daniel. You work 6 days a week, sometimes double shifts. You're exhausted all the time. Emma barely sees you during the week. Don't tell me you're managing fine. So your solution is to swoop in and save me? My solution is to offer you an opportunity, Isabella said, her voice sharp. You could manage the shop, have equity, build something you're proud of instead of just surviving. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't understand that accepting her money would change everything between them. But the truth was, he was tired of scraping by, tired of worrying about every unexpected expense, tired of feeling like he was failing Emma because he couldn't give her more. I don't want to owe you, he said quietly. You wouldn't owe me. It would be a legitimate business arrangement.
We'd draw up contracts, everything legal and proper. And what happens if we break up? If this doesn't work out? Isabella flinched. Then the business arrangement stands separate from our relationship. You'd still have the job, still have the equity. You've really thought this through. I've thought about nothing else for 3 weeks.
Daniel sat down on the bed, rubbing his face. This is a lot. I know. And I'm not trying to pressure you. Just think about it. She sat beside him. I know you're proud. I know you don't want to feel like you need me. But Daniel, needing someone isn't weakness. It's human. He looked at her. When did you get so wise? Around the time I met a man who taught me that vulnerability isn't the same as failure. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Daniel said, Can I think about it? Really think about it? Of course, take all the time you need. But even as he said it, Daniel knew what his answer would be. He just needed time to accept it. 2 weeks later, Daniel walked into the coffee shop to find Marcus grinning like an idiot. You told her yes, didn't you? Daniel set his bag down. How do you know that? Because she was here yesterday, measured the whole place, talked about new espresso machines and expanding the seating. She's moving fast. That's what rich people do. Marcus leaned against the counter. For what it's worth, I think it's great. This place needs help, and you need a break. I'm not looking for a break. Yeah, you are. You just don't want to admit it. Marcus grabbed a rag and started wiping down the counter. Look, I know you've got pride, we all do, but sometimes pride is just fear wearing a different costume. Daniel thought about that. When did you become a philosopher? I've always been deep. You just never noticed. The renovation started a month later. Isabella hired contractors, ordered new equipment, worked with a designer to update the space without losing its character. She consulted Daniel on every decision, made sure he approved everything. It should have felt like she was taking over, but it didn't. It felt like they were building something together. The shop closed for 3 weeks. During that time, Isabella paid everyone's salary anyway. Marcus cried when he found out. Your girlfriend's a saint, he told Daniel. She's not a saint, Daniel said. She's just rich and generous. There's a difference. But watching Isabella throw herself into the project, seeing how much it mattered to her, Daniel started to understand something. This wasn't about charity or pity or guilt. This was her way of showing love. She couldn't just say she cared. She had to do something about it. And maybe that was okay. Maybe he needed to stop judging her for having resources and start appreciating that she wanted to use them to help people she loved. The coffee shop reopened on a Tuesday in late spring. Isabella had insisted on keeping the name, 9th Street Coffee, but everything else was upgraded. New espresso machines that actually worked, comfortable seating, better lighting, a menu that included pastries from a local bakery. The place was packed from the moment they opened the doors. Daniel worked behind the counter with Marcus, both of them struggling to keep up with the orders. Isabella stayed in the background, watching with a satisfied smile. By the end of the day, they'd made more money than they usually made in a week. Okay, Marcus said, collapsing into a chair after they closed. I take back every skeptical thing I ever thought. Your girlfriend's a genius. I'll tell her you said that. Please do. I want a raise. Daniel laughed. He felt lighter than he had in years, like maybe, finally, things were going to be okay. That night, he took Isabella to dinner. Not somewhere fancy, just a small Italian place near his apartment that he'd been going to for years. Thank you, he said over pasta. For the shop. For everything. You don't have to thank me. I do. I know I fought you on it. I know I made it harder than it needed to be. You were protecting yourself, Isabella said. I understand that. I'm trying to stop, Daniel admitted. Protecting myself so much. It's exhausting. What changed? I realized that you're not going anywhere, and that maybe I don't want you to. Isabella reached across the table for his hand. I'm not going anywhere. Good. Because Emma would be devastated. Just Emma? And me, Daniel said quietly. I'd be devastated too. They finished dinner and walked home slowly, hand in hand. It was a perfect spring evening, warm but not hot, the city buzzing with life around them. When they got to Daniel's building, Isabella stopped at the door. I should probably head home, she said. It's late, and I have an early meeting tomorrow. Or you could stay, Daniel said. Emma keeps asking why you don't live with us. Isabella's eyes widened. Daniel! I'm not asking you to move in, he said quickly. Not yet. I'm just saying, maybe we start thinking about it, about what comes next. What do you want to come next? Daniel took a breath. This was it. The moment he'd been avoiding and moving toward simultaneously for months. I want you in our lives, permanently. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want Emma to stop asking when you're coming back because you're already here. I want... He paused, gathering courage. I want to marry you, eventually, when we're both ready. Isabella's breath caught. You want to marry me? Yeah, I do. Is that crazy? Completely, she said, but she was smiling. We've only been together 6 months. I know, that's why I said eventually, but I needed you to know that this is real for me, that I'm serious. It's real for me too, Isabella said softly. It's the most real thing in my life. So we're doing this? Really doing this? Yeah, we're doing this. Daniel kissed her right there on the sidewalk, not caring who saw, not caring about anything except the woman in his arms. When they pulled apart, Isabella was crying. Happy tears? He asked. Very happy tears. They went inside together, and when they checked on Emma, she was fast asleep with her rabbit clutched tight. Daniel stood in the doorway, Isabella beside him, and felt a peace he'd never experienced before. This was his family, imperfect and complicated and real, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. 6 months later, on a crisp October morning, Daniel closed the door to his apartment for the last time. The place was empty now, all their things already moved to Isabella's penthouse. Well, not Isabella's anymore. Theirs. It had taken him a while to agree to the move. The apartment had been his and Emma's home for 5 years. Letting it go felt like closing a chapter he wasn't sure he was ready to finish. But Emma had been thrilled at the idea of her own room, a big one with space for all her toys and books. And Isabella had promised they could decorate it however Emma wanted. You okay? Isabella asked, standing beside him in the empty hallway. Yeah, just saying goodbye, I guess. We can keep it if you want, as a backup. No, it's time. He took one last look, then locked the door and handed the keys to the landlord. Emma was waiting for them in the car, bouncing with excitement. Can we go now? I want to see my new room again. We just saw it yesterday, Daniel said, climbing in beside her. I know, but I want to make sure it's still there. Isabella laughed from the front seat. I promise it's still there. The penthouse was in Manhattan, in a building Daniel used to walk past and wonder who lived there. Now he knew. He did. It was surreal. The whole thing was surreal. But as they walked into the apartment and Emma ran to her room, squealing about how big it was, Daniel felt something settle inside him. This was right. Different, but right. They spent the day unpacking. Isabella had hired people to do most of it, but Daniel insisted on handling Emma's room himself. He wanted her to feel like it was hers, not something someone else had set up. By evening, Emma's room was done. Posters on the walls, toys organized on new shelves, her bed made with the same blankets she'd had in the old apartment. It's perfect, Dad, Emma said, hugging him tight. Yeah? Yeah, can Isabella come see? She's in the kitchen. Go get her. Emma ran off, and Daniel stood in the middle of the room, taking it in. A year ago, he never could have imagined this. Never could have imagined his daughter living in a penthouse in Manhattan, dating a billionaire, being part of something bigger than himself. Life was strange. You planned and prepared and tried to control everything, and then something unexpected happened. Someone unexpected happened, and everything changed. Isabella appeared in the doorway with Emma. She says I need to inspect the room. It's very important, Emma said seriously. You have to make sure everything's right. Isabella walked around slowly, examining everything. The posters are perfectly straight. The toys are organized by category. The bed looks very comfortable. She turned to Emma. I think it's perfect. Good. Now you can live here too. Isabella glanced at Daniel. They hadn't told Emma yet, hadn't found the right moment. Actually, Isabella said, kneeling down to Emma's level. I already do live here. This is my home too now. Is that okay with you? Emma's eyes went wide. Really? You're staying forever? If that's okay with you and your dad? Emma threw her arms around Isabella's neck. It's very okay. Daniel watched them, his chest tight with emotion.
This was his family. Unconventional and unexpected, but his.
That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Isabella sat on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. It was quiet up here, peaceful in a way Daniel never expected Manhattan to be. "I have something for you," Isabella said. She pulled a small box from her pocket. Not a ring box. Something else. Daniel opened it. Inside were 2 keys. "One is to the coffee shop," Isabella explained. "It's yours now. Full ownership. I had the papers drawn up. It's in your name." Daniel stared at the key. "Isabella, I can't." "Yes, you can. It's not charity. It's not a gift. You've earned it. The shop's been profitable every month since we reopened. You've built something real. This just makes it official." "What's the other key?" "To here. I know you already have one, but I wanted to give you this one specifically, because this is your home now. Not just a place you're staying, your home." Daniel set the box down and pulled her close. "How did I get this lucky?" "I ask myself the same thing every day," Isabella said. They sat there for a long time, holding each other, watching the city breathe below them. A year and a half after that rainy night in Brooklyn, Daniel stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his tie. He still wasn't used to wearing suits, but he was getting better at it. "You look handsome, Dad," Emma said from the doorway. She was 8 now, taller and more confident, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. "Thanks, kiddo. You look pretty great yourself." "I know." She walked in and sat on the bed. "Are you nervous?" "A little." "Why?" "You love Isabella. She loves you. Getting married is the easy part." Daniel laughed. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You're just finally noticing." There was a knock on the door. Marcus stuck his head in. "Time to go, man. Isabella's ready." Daniel took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do this." The ceremony was small, just close friends and family in a garden outside the city. Nothing extravagant, nothing showy, just people who mattered gathered to watch 2 people promise to love each other. Emma was the flower girl. She took the job very seriously, walking down the aisle with perfect precision, scattering petals like her life depended on it. Then Isabella appeared. She was wearing a simple white dress, her hair down, her face glowing with happiness. She wasn't the untouchable CEO anymore. She was just Isabella, his Isabella. Daniel's throat closed up. He'd never seen anything more beautiful. She walked to him, took his hands, and smiled. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he whispered back. The officiant started talking, but Daniel barely heard the words. He was too focused on Isabella, on the way she was looking at him like he was the only person in the world. When it was time for vows, Isabella went first. "I spent most of my life thinking success was measured in dollars and power," she said, her voice steady. "I built an empire because I thought that's what mattered. And then I met you. And you taught me that the things that actually matter can't be bought or built. They can be only found. In quiet moments, in honest conversations, in the way someone looks at you when you're at your worst and loves you anyway." She squeezed his hands. "You taught me how to be human again, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." Daniel had to swallow hard before he could speak. "I didn't think I deserved you," he said. "I thought we were too different, that this couldn't work. But you showed up anyway. You kept showing up, even when I tried to push you away. You loved Emma like she was yours. You made me believe that maybe I could have more than just survival, that I could have happiness." His voice cracked. "You gave me hope. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. They exchanged rings, simple gold bands, nothing flashy. And when the officiant said, "You may kiss your wife," Daniel did, pouring everything he felt into that kiss. The reception was held in the same garden. Good food, good music, good people. Emma danced with everyone, her face lit up with joy. Marcus got drunk and gave a rambling speech about how he'd known from the beginning that they were meant to be together. Catherine, who'd become an unlikely friend over the months, gave a more composed toast about taking chances and following your heart. As the sun set, Daniel found Isabella standing at the edge of the garden, looking out at the trees. "You okay?" he asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "I'm perfect," she said. "I'm married to you. I have Emma. I have a life that feels real. How could I be anything but perfect?" "It's not going to be easy," Daniel said. "We're still going to fight. Still going to have hard days. I know, but we'll figure it out, together." Together, Daniel agreed. Emma ran up to them, out of breath from dancing. Can we cut the cake now? I've been waiting forever. Isabella laughed. Yes, let's cut the cake. They walked back to the reception together, the three of them, and Daniel felt a fullness in his chest he'd never experienced before. This was it. This was everything. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And that was enough. 5 years later, Daniel sat in the office above 9th Street Coffee, going over the books. The shop had expanded to 3 locations now. Marcus managed the original. Daniel oversaw all 3 and had just hired 2 new managers for the others. It was more successful than he'd ever dreamed. And it was his. He'd built it. With Isabella's initial help, yes, but he turned it into something sustainable, something he was proud of. His phone buzzed, a text from Emma, who was 13 now and texting him constantly. Can Isabella pick me up from school? I want to show her my science project. Daniel smiled and texted back. Sure, I'll let her know. Emma and Isabella had only grown closer over the years. Emma called her mom now, had been for about 2 years. The first time it happened, Isabella had cried for an hour. Sarah had never come back, never called, never tried to be part of Emma's life. It hurt Emma sometimes, Daniel knew, but she had Isabella. And that seemed to be enough. Daniel's phone rang. Isabella's name lit up the screen. Hey, he answered. Emma just texted. She wants you to pick her up. I know, she texted me too. I'm already on my way. There was a pause. Can you come home early tonight? I want to talk to you about something. Daniel's heart skipped. Those words still made him nervous. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I have news. Good news or bad news? Good news, I think. We'll talk tonight. She hung up before he could ask more questions. Daniel spent the rest of the day distracted, wondering what the news could be. By the time he got home that evening, he'd imagined a dozen different scenarios. He found Isabella and Emma in the kitchen making dinner together. They were laughing about something, flour on both their faces. What's going on in here? Daniel asked. Isabella's teaching me how to make pasta from scratch, Emma said. It's harder than it looks. Everything worth doing is hard, Isabella said. She met Daniel's eyes over Emma's head. Can you help her finish? I need to talk to your dad for a minute. Ooh, secret conversation, Emma said. Are you pregnant? Isabella choked on nothing. What? Madison's mom just had a baby. She was super weird before she told everyone. You're being weird. I'm not pregnant, Isabella said quickly. I'm just being weird for other reasons. Emma shrugged and went back to the pasta. Daniel followed Isabella to their bedroom, closing the door behind them. Okay, he said. You're freaking me out. What's going on? Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, looking nervous. The board approached me with something, a new venture, expanding into international markets. It would be huge for the company. That's great, isn't it? It would mean traveling, a lot, for at least 2 years. I'd be gone weeks at a time. Daniel's stomach dropped. Oh. I told them no. Isabella, I told them no, she repeated, because I'm not missing 2 years of Emma's life. I'm not missing 2 years of our life. The company will be fine without me. You love that company. I love you more. She took his hands. I spent so long thinking my career was everything, but it's not. You and Emma are everything. The company is just what I do. You're who I am. Daniel pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed. You're sure? I'm sure. I've been sure for 5 years. What are you going to do instead? I don't know yet. Maybe nothing for a while. Maybe I'll help you with the coffee shops. Maybe I'll finally learn how to make pasta without Emma making fun of me. She pulled back to look at him. The point is, I get to choose. And I'm choosing this, us. Daniel kissed her, slow and deep. I love you. I love you too. They sat there for a while, just holding each other. Then Emma's voice came from the other side of the door. Are you guys done being gross? The pasta's ready. They laughed and went back to the kitchen, where Emma had somehow managed to finish the pasta, despite it being her first time making it. They ate together at the table, the 3 of them, talking about their days and making plans for the weekend. And Daniel looked around at his family, his daughter, his wife, this life they'd built together, and felt a gratitude so profound it almost hurt. He'd spent so long thinking he didn't deserve good things. That happiness was for other people. that he was meant to struggle, to survive, but never to thrive. Isabella had taught him differently. She'd shown him that love wasn't about deserve, it was about choice. You chose to show up, you chose to stay, you chose to fight for what mattered, and they'd both chosen this, every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That was the real story. Not the fairy tale version where the billionaire swept in and saved the struggling single father. But the messy, complicated, beautiful truth, where two broken people found each other and decided to be less broken together. Where they learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that asking for help wasn't failure, that love was something you built, not something you found fully formed. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments when their different worlds collided in uncomfortable ways, but they'd learned how to navigate it, how to compromise, how to fight fair, how to apologize when they were wrong, how to forgive when the other person was. They'd learned how to be partners, real partners. And that, Daniel had discovered, was worth more than all the money in the world. As they cleaned up after dinner, Emma chattering about her science project, Isabella humming while she washed dishes, Daniel felt something he'd been chasing his whole life without knowing it. Peace. Not the absence of problems, not some perfect state of being, just the quiet certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, with the people he was supposed to be with. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Isabella stood on their balcony, looking out at the city lights like they had so many times before. "Do you ever think about that night?" Isabella asked. "When I asked you to walk me home?" "All the time." "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Daniel thought about everything that had happened since, the scrutiny, the fights, the fear, the doubt. And then he thought about everything else, the love, the laughter, the family, the life. "No," he said, "I don't regret a single second." Isabella leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding on tight. They stood there for a long time, two people who'd found each other in the rain and decided to build something that would last. Not perfect, but real. And that was enough. It would always be enough.